Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie Gomolka, Auction.com correspondent. Our live coverage continues, and I think right now I'm the luckiest person at CrimeCon. I'm joined by the Dateline correspondents Josh Mankiewicz, Dennis Murphy, and Keith Morrison. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Are they here? They're here.
They're here. They're really here. So I first want to ask you, why do you guys love to take part in an event like CrimeCon?
This is our audience. In the same way it's your audience. We love meeting people. We love finding out what they think. We do stories for them all the time.
Josh discovered it, and we didn't know what it was. He said, we're all going to CrimeCon.
And it was 3 years ago, and I made everybody come.
He is so ridiculously bossy, you have no idea.
That is so amazing. And so what is the panel or discussion that you guys are hosting here?
We're going to talk about...
We're going to sit and yak, I think.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about how we do what we do, why we do what we do, and maybe why some people in the audience respond to it.
Yeah.
I mean, the strange thing is, Steph, we go meet our crews in the field. We have the story set up with the producers. We bring them back to wherever we put stories together, the West Coast or East Coast in my case, and then they go out through the window, and we don't think anything about it. But to see that there's an entire convention, an arena of people that watch it and like it, it's strange.
It is strange. And then somebody will come up to you and say, give you a name of a story that went on television a year or two earlier or something.
And the
I have
names
a clue
are
what they're talking about because
the names only happen in the last 6 hours.
The names are the only parts of the stories that we don't have any role in writing.
That's right.
Those are written by our bosses. Everything else we have some significant editorial responsibility for. But they come up and they say, what happened in the murder on Crystal Cove? And I'm like, yeah, which one was that? And they're like, the guy who killed his wife.
That's
I'm
exactly
like,
right.
yeah, that's all of them.
Yeah. Dennis, they're just asking you to hold your mic a little higher so we can still hear you. But we're in New Orleans, and you guys are all over the map when it comes to stories across the country. Have you guys ever covered anything locally here?
Oh, yes.
Oh, we've all done. Every time
yes.
I've been, the lights were out and the winds were blowing. And
Number of times for that.
I was in Miami Bureau for years, so the storms always came this way.
Oh, wow.
However, strange things do happen.
I've been here for a
in
lot of
this
things
town.
over the years. I was here for the Pan Am crash in 1982. That was the first time I worked in New Orleans. But I don't think I've done a Dateline story here because people are in too good a mood here. Maybe there's
I've worked Baton Rouge.
not enough murders.
Oh, yeah, then it's not too far, about an hour away. Our cameraman Cameron's from Baton Rouge. Keith,
Yes.
everyone here probably has seen your Today Show interview with Willie Geist and Bill Hader, who's also a fan of Oxygen Snapped. We have that on record
Oh,
somewhere.
really? Oh.
Yeah, which is really interesting. But I want to ask you, what did you think of his impression of you, and what was it like to meet him?
It was great, but it was wonderful. It really, there's nothing quite as stimulating and delightful as being made fun of on national television by a guy who's really good at it. But then it turns out he's really good at these guys too.
I know.
So
I hope everybody's seen his show, Barry, the short run that was a terrific
Yeah, he
show.
has great work on that show. I do also want to ask, and this can be for all of you. So he was I'm fangirling right now. Bill Hader was fangirling. People at CrimeCon are fangirling. Who is the person for you guys that would be your Keith Morrison, your Josh Mankiewicz that you would kind of flip out? Or maybe you've already met them.
well, it's mostly the folks around here because people are so nice to us. It is truly a delight to meet the people who
It's thrilling to come
like
here
to
to
watch us.
CrimeCon and meet people in person that I've only spoken with on Twitter. That's the great thing. People whom I've had long conversations with on Twitter about what works on Dateline and what doesn't work on Dateline, and then you get to actually meet people in person, which is great.
Yeah.
I'm happy to catch up with Natalie Bannon from Nashville, Tennessee. 3 years ago, we all got sent on the opening night of the season.
Right.
Right.
To various houses around the country to fans, and I went to Natalie and RC's house, and it was great to sit there and watch the show and meet their friends.
And they're driving in
and they're
today.
gonna be here
Wow.
tomorrow, I think.
The connections are crazy. You mentioned Twitter. You guys are pretty, active. And is it you, Josh, that has the clearing out my desk on Fridays
Yes,
kind of
always,
series?
yeah.
If you're here at CrimeCon, what are you clearing out on your desk today?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, on Twitter, my Friday desk clearing pictures are always like drugs and guns and stuff that police seized. Yeah, so I hope
You're going to start laying off Florida. There's a lot of body English. I'm based in Florida.
Without Florida and Texas, we'd be off
I
the
don't
air.
think we'd have a show.
that's
Florida, DUH, Florida.
Oxygen does have a new show coming out called Florida Man, so we'll
Right.
be exploring
It's a
some of those
perfect
stories. Maybe
example.
we'll
Yeah.
pick your
Yeah.
brain on those.
Right.
So you guys are you based in different places? You're not based out of New York?
We, Josh and I are both on the West Coast in the
Oh,
LA
very cool.
area.
I didn't know
And I live in South Florida.
Oh, wow.
And
That's so
Andrea
nice.
is in New York.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. So you guys are all on
Andrea would
different
love
coasts.
to be here, but she is otherwise occupied.
Yeah,
as
we
you
do miss
probably
her.
heard, yeah.
Yeah. It is Dateline Friday also.
Yes.
So I
It
feel like
is.
the only appropriate way for us to talk is what can we expect? What should fans be tuning into?
Tonight
It's another
is,
Mankiewicz, you know.
yeah.
What's the title of it, Josh?
I don't know because that's the thing. It was originally called Texas Twist, but I don't know what it's called this time. It's an update to a
Some
story.
last minute edits.
It's a story that we did in 2017, and it had a lot of twists then, but subsequently, post-conviction, it's got one giant twist that makes it sort of essentially a brand new story. It's a great story from the Gulf Coast of Texas.
Yeah.
Don't watch alone.
We will not be.
You won't be.
Especially if you're at CrimeCon. You should not be watching alone
I don't
tonight.
think you can.
I want to ask you, everyone here loves Dateline. It's just been kind of this legacy in the households for families to connect, to not watch alone. Why do you think even in this wave of true crime, Dateline has been, the thing that's always staying true to fans and they keep tuning in?
Because we're good and we've been there forever.
Because we've been doing it for a long time, and we're better at it.
Well, now. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. If we don't brag for us, who is?
Who will, right.
Right now, for me, it's a little odd to be like Josh, Dennis, Keith. I'm just so used to hearing your full names and that formality. Do you guys have fans that have that kind of interaction too?
Oh, yeah.
Many of them are just off camera right here.
Can you give me, tell me about a story of someone you met here, maybe at CrimeCon, or maybe when you're covering a story that just kind of stuck with you?
Oh, I mean, in airports all the time, people run up to me and say, I'm Ezekiel 301F. I'm like, hey, how you doing? We were just talking the other day. I mean, airports are the great equalizer because,
They are.
That's the best part of this
Right.
experience. Somebody comes up out of the blue and says, I like your work.
which is great. I mean, the interaction that we have with the audience, both here at CrimeCon and also sort of out there in the real world, is 100% positive, and it's always a pleasure.
It is. I mean, it's I have to pinch myself on a regular basis that, we're these old coots who wander around the country.
Because we've all
getting
done
this
other
positive
stuff
attention.
before this.
I know, but
we were out there picking grapes for a long
quite
time
wonderful.
on TV News.
Yeah. Dan Slepian has the new podcast. He's the he's a supervising producer at Dateline, 13 Alibis. It's great. But I also know Dateline, you guys are going into the podcast world too, right?
We are. You can watch for regular podcasts from us from now on, I think.
Yeah, we've put we have the shows on, the audio of the shows, and we have Dan's podcast, and then we're looking at other things that are.
I've heard you in my car radio sometime.
Have you?
It feels like a natural marriage, right? Of
terrifying,
the
actually.
show.
Yeah,
with
what
the
is he
doc-
doing?
I mean, it's kind of crazy that the biggest brand in true crime doesn't have its own podcast, so we're trying to fix that.
And merchandise.
Yeah, that's right, and merchandise, but.
You can't get anything at the NBC store
No,
with
now you
Dateline on it.
can. Now you can.
Now you can.
Through our constant hectoring. Yes.
No, it's so cool. So one thing that's happening is Oxygen has this kind of exhibit pop up on the side where they're asking, who's the Oxygen talent you would call if you were booked and in jail. So I want to ask you guys, who would be the Dateline correspondent, maybe it's a producer at Dateline, that you would want to call if something happened, and tell me why.
Well, first of all, if I were wrongly accused, I would want Dan Slepian, because there's both good and bad about that, because he does eventually get people out of prison. The problem is it takes like 30 years. So
it's a little
that'd be a
slow.
problem. Otherwise, I'd have one of these guys or Andrea do it.
I would go to my partner many years. We really invented Dateline together, Jane Stone, because she's got a MacGyver sensibility. She's the smartest person I've ever known. Whatever the jam is, she'd figure it out.
Yeah. The most frightening person in the world, but also delightful, Carol Gable.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who, you can go anywhere with Carol. It's like you're a child again, being led around by the nose, but it works. Yeah.
That's so cool. And what do you think the crime that would have got you there? Is it clearing out your desk?
Yeah, talking too much, probably. Yeah.
Great. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank
We're
you.
Thank you,
so
Stephanie.
excited to have you here on the live stream, and we're also, we know Stephanie Gosk will be moderating that
That I'm
panel.
very excited about.
Yeah, that's so
she's
fantastic.
terrific.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
has a new Oxygen show coming out, Killer Motive. But thank you so much for joining us. Our live coverage here at CrimeCon will continue tomorrow. We'll have more interviews and insights, but tonight, be sure to tune in around 6:45 Central Time for a keynote address with Nancy Grace. Stay tuned.